Well, I want to thank the worship team for allowing me to be here on the last Sunday when there's 2 sermons to be given. My understanding is I'm being paid by the hour, so is the treasurer here to confirm that? All right, well, we'll have to work that out during the coffee hour. Maybe I can get a tequila shot for the treasurer, not for me. And it's great. Thank you, Tanner. Thank you to our guest musician for your wonderful contributions to this service. After all is said and done, more is said than is done. I see several nodding heads because we're all involved in organizations, whether it be civic organizations, whether it be religious organizations, whether it be educationally oriented organizations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, where we've lived that truth, right? A lot is said. And I'll have to say that, I've got preachers have that disease, but maybe worse than everybody. A lot of words, but maybe not as much action as would be warranted by the number of words. Now, in 1790, the Universalist Convention made a statement in which they said that it is inconsistent with mutual and universal love to hold any of our fellow human beings in bondage, referring, of course, to the horrible evil of slavery. And then for 51 years, they were silent on the matter. Reverend Samuel May said of the Unitarians, as a body, they could have acted courageously. As a body, they could have acted boldly, but they didn't. But I'm happy to say that even though the home offices, so to speak, were more words than action, that there were individual ministers and individual congregations that did get with the program. In fact, by the 1840s, over 300 Universalist ministers had made a faith statement saying that slavery was wrong and that we stand against it. Over 170 Unitarian ministers wrote a big thing in The Liberator, William Lloyd Garrison's paper, a statement decrying the evils of slavery. I want to tell you a few stories of some of the courageous people in our faith lineage. Let me tell you about Maria Weston Chapman, who was a member of William Ellery Channing's congregation, one of our most historic Unitarian ministers. Now, she got into this work in abolition through her husband, and she was a well-known socialite in Boston. And so I don't know if you have any well-known socialites here in Fort Worth. I imagine you do. They like to go to the galas, right, and make a big splash and get the photo ops and get all the glory and act like they've done something great. And then they go on back to the country club or wherever and continue their life. Or their yacht or whatever the case may be. Do we have yachts in Fort Worth? Big boats, okay. But, so people were skeptical. But then in 1834, Maria Weston Chapman, her 3 sisters, and 8 women founded the Boston Female Anti-Slavery Society, in which they said that justice demands that slavery be ended immediately. None of this gradualism stuff. Justice says it has to be ended now. So people are, oh, maybe this socialite means business here. She began to do her work. William Lloyd Garrison asked her to join him in his work with the Boston Anti-Slavery Society. By the way, why did they have to have a female anti-slavery society? That's right. Women, don't be getting into men's territory, you know. But Garrison saw her commitment. She began to work with William Lloyd Garrison. She began to be a co-editor of his paper, The Liberator. And so one day, a man from England came over to talk about slavery and the abolition of slavery. And I think, as we all know, oftentimes it takes someone from another country to come over here and tell us the truth. Look in the mirror, America. Your corporate media doesn't really want you to look that closely into it. They're going to spend a lot of time on all these reality shows and which celebrity went into rehab and all these nonsensical things, but we're going to show you in the mirror who you really are. That's why, it's good to read foreign publications. By the way, do y'all still have Al Jazeera America? Is that still on? Well, anyway, I know in a lot of places it's taken off. I think it might even have got out of business. Regardless, point being, they told too much truth. They told too much truth. So oftentimes it takes foreign people not from this country, to come over and say, hey, look yourself in the mirror, America. And so this man came and he gave his anti-slavery speech from England, and a big ruckus ensued. And by this time, an angry mob of people who, although were so self-righteous about not living in the South, were actually making money off of the cotton industry in the South and slavery. I know that doesn't happen in modern day America, where you have corporate hypocrites who are making money off of things, who want to look good in public, but behind the scenes, look at where the money goes, where the money comes from. Some of them might even be appointed to cabinet positions, but we won't get into that. So the next day, Maria Weston Chapman and her 3 sisters and these 8 women are having their nice meeting about the Female Anti-Slavery Society, and it was rumored that this man from England was right in there with them. So the crowd gathered there, and they got more and more angry. They got more and more violent. And the mayor came over and he said, hey, I think you guys should get out of here. It's getting dangerous out there. To which Maria Weston Chapman said, if this is to be the last bulwark of freedom, we might as well die here as anywhere. You see, the socialite had become a true activist, a spiritual activist for human dignity and freedom. What did Reverend King so often say? If a person hasn't found out what they're willing to die for, they don't know what their life is about and what they're willing to live for. Well, the mayor got the police over there, and they whisked them out the back door as the angry mob cried out. But from that day forward, Maria Weston Chapman could not walk the streets of Boston without people hissing at her, cursing at her, shouting dirty names at her, going by her house, yelling things, throwing things up on the porch, etc., etc. Later, she was in Philadelphia introducing another abolitionist speaker from England. And the angry mob ensued again. The next day they came, this angry mob, and burned down the building. And then after emancipation, Maria Weston Chapman dedicated the rest of her life to educating the freed slaves, knowing full well you cannot go from slavery, where it's illegal for you to even learn to read and write and to learn the language. You can't jump from that to supposedly being free. You have to have the tools to go into the society and be a free citizen and earn a living. I might say parenthetically that Garrison, once the emancipation happened, said, "My work is done. It's finished. I'm retiring, and I'm going to Sun City to live a life of leisure." I think that was a couple of years before Sun City was established. By the way, we've got a Sun City in Georgetown over there by Austin, if anybody wants to live that life. I do have some brochures. I'm just joking. The second person I want to talk about is Reverend Samuel May, who I referenced just a moment ago. He was the minister of what was then known as Church of the Messiah in Syracuse, New York. And the Church of the Messiah was one of the stops on the Underground Railroad. So they had an escaped slave from the South named Jerry, who was there in Syracuse. And of course, after this fugitive slave law of 1850, the bounty hunters came up and they caught Jerry, and now he was in a prison, in a cell from the commissioner there in Syracuse. Well, it just so happens that the wife of this commissioner, she was sympathetic to the cause of abolition. And so she contacted the faith community that was organized in that area. That's one of the things that we want to talk about. We have to be organized to do good. The Universalist missionary that came to Texas in the late 1700s, you know what he said? He said, "Organized error will outdistance unorganized truth every time." And that's why, friends, we have organized the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry. So when you go into the fellowship area back there, you'll see some of our brochures. We have 34 congregations in our coalition. We work with all people of different faiths. We work with people of civic organizations and state organizations working for good. So grab one of those. You're one of our congregations, and we're proud to have you, and we appreciate your vision and your dedication. And also grab one of our accomplishment sheets. It's front and back. And I'm always happy to say that I had to make the font size so small, you're going to have to go to your eye doctor and go, "I need my prescription looked at. My arm ain't long enough to see this stuff." So you are a part of that. But I'm going to go back now to church, to this situation with Jerry in Syracuse, New York. You see, these congregations are organized. You know what the signal was? When the church bells began to ring. We got any church bells in Fort Worth here? I went down to the water park last night, and they were having this awesome Juneteenth celebration. I didn't know that was going on. It was a bonus. But as I walked out, I could hear one of the churches were playing Amazing Grace. They had the little bells going on there. Pretty cool. I felt like I was Norman Rockwell. So when those church bells rang, the people knew to go to this commissioner's court, and they began to shout to release Jerry, release Jerry. The thing escalated to the extent, this is hard for me to believe, it's hard for us to believe, they got a battering ram. Can you imagine Reverend Sherry and the Catholic bishop and the Methodist minister with a battering ram? They beat down and battered down the door, and they got Jerry out of that place as Homeland Security, the U.S. Marshals were shooting at them, but they got Jerry out of there. They busted him out. Then they hid him out for a few days. They got him on a wagon, and then eventually a ship to go to Canada so he could be free. We might have to start doing that now. Gotten so horrific. 25 minutes from my doorstep in Taylor, Texas, are you aware that we have over 500 women who are seeking asylum? They're not criminals. They've committed no crime. They're not trying to come in illegally. They give themselves up at the border under international treaty saying, we're here to seek asylum. We have over 500 women in a residential center. They have the gall to call this place a residential center. And when I go and we're trying to get it shut down because the county commissioners in Williamson County where we live, they have to do the contract on it. And we go regularly and we're putting pressure on our county commissioners to end this contract. But when I go there, I say plainly, you cannot begin with a lie and get anywhere good. When you put on it's a residential center and we all know it's a prison, come on. And you people claim to be Christians. You opened your meeting with a prayer in the name of Jesus. Now, I'm glad you believe in Jesus. Now let's put into practice what he spoke about, what he taught. You cannot start with a lie. Only the truth will set you free. You people understand this. You know this. I don't take off my preacher hat when I go to the county commission. The third person I want to talk about is Reverend Theodore Parker, whose words I read at the opening words. He was the most well-known Unitarian minister working in the abolition movement. He gave his first sermon in 1841 about the sin of slavery. Furthermore, he would go all around the area 60, 70 times a year on stump speeches and preaching, talking about the evils of slavery, where he said, the American church are the most staunch supporters of slavery. It cannot be that way any longer. And you notice the nonsensical and immoral preachers who are supporting what's going on in our nation's capital and in our capital in Austin. When these people get up in the name of God, in the name of faith, and support the evil, cruel, depraved things that are going on in this country in our name, that's why we have to have UU ministers and other liberal ministers who actually believe in freedom, who actually believe in democracy, who actually believe in the principles that this nation was founded on, who actually believe that religion is a vehicle to free people, not to enslave people and to put people into prisons. We have to be out there. We have to be in the public square. I've gone to UU congregation. Oh, why do you have to talk about faith when you go up there? I said, because the people that are buttressing this stuff, they're going in the name of faith. They have to know that there are other people of faith who believe something diametrically opposed to the evil and wrong things that they are doing. And I cannot tell you how many times when I go and we go to the legislature up in Austin, and we meet people. Oh, let's talk about, I'm just going to diverge just a second into the reproductive justice issue. By the way, I see you guys are a reproductive justice congregation. I'm so... See, we have to have that. But when Senator Kirk Watson and other people who are allies of ours go, you know what, thank you for being here, because all we hear from our other colleagues is, we have the faith voice behind us. We never hear another voice of faith that says anything different. So it is an incumbent upon us. Now, Reverend Parker, you see, he was a well-known preacher. He had William and Ellen Craft, who had come 900 miles from Georgia to the free state of Massachusetts to be free, and they were members of Parker's congregation. But Homeland Security, I keep saying that. The U.S. Marshals, they wanted a high-profile arrest. Why would they go to Reverend Parker's church? Why do these people go to this Jeffers guy over in Dallas? Because he's well known. He makes a lot of noise. Does anybody know the statement, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? Who said that? Lincoln. Where did he say it? Gettysburg Address. How many memorized that when they were a kid? Do you know where that came from? That was from Reverend Theodore Parker. He went around talking about how spirituality and religion and justice and democracy should be integrated into a whole, into a government of the people, by the people, for the people. I've seen the sermon where he said it, and he said it over and over and over again. Does anybody know the statement, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice? Who said that? See, Reverend King said that. No, he didn't. Reverend King learned that from Parker, because Parker is the one who said that. King went to Boston College. You think he learned about Parker? You think he learned about Unitarians and Universalists? You think he learned about liberal and progressive theologians? Of course he did. He's the one that popularized it. Wisely he did, because it's a powerful teaching. But once again, I've read the sermon. I wanted to make sure that wasn't just one of those you myths that we wanted to feel so good about ourselves. Oh, he really said it first. It took me about 2 or 3 months to dig through, calling Harvard, calling all these theological libraries. And finally, I was able to get the sermon where Parker said that. I wanted to read the whole thing. He's the one that said it. And also, by the way, you remember when Obama had that rug in the Oval Office that had quotes on it? Both of those quotes were on that rug. The 2 quotes from a Unitarian minister. So, if in Fort Worth they wanted to do a high-profile arrest, would they come here? So, but they did. You see, we want to be in that position. Someone asked me when I was in Houston a couple of years ago talking about the justice ministry, he goes, I'm retired from the guy. I worked in security. If you ever need any security, let me know. Have you ever had a death threat? I said, I'm sorry to say I haven't. Because as soon as I get a death threat, I'll know that we are someone they are concerned about. People don't give death threats about people who have no power, or go, oh, look at those sweet little liberals over there. Isn't that cute, them over there with that little rally with 30 or 40 people? They don't care about us unless we can put pressure on them. We have to have enough people, we have to have enough voices, we have to have enough power and coalition building to make a difference. So Reverend Parker, he took Ellen Craft into his home. That's why he wrote in the sermon in the quote that I had, that's why he was there with a gun. That's why he was there with a sword. They had William, the husband. He was out. They were hiding him in different places. and they had what they call the Committee on Vigilance. You think we need a Committee on Vigilance in Fort Worth? DFW? Austin? Do we need one in Texas? Do we need one in every village and hamlet in America? I think every city needs a Committee on Vigilance. If this isn't a time to be vigilant, I don't know what one is. Now we know we've had horrific things where we needed vigilance. But now, now that we were making some progress, and folks, there is no doubt in my mind that it's not a coincidence that after our first black president, we'd get this kind of president. The people that want to go back to white supremacy and white male dominance, this is the backlash of that, and I pray to God it's temporary, but we're going to have to work our you-know-what's off to make sure it is temporary. But Parker, the fine for this was 6 months in prison for harboring a fugitive and $1,000. And Parker said, I would pluck a fugitive out of this system, these kidnappers as he called them, just like I would pluck a small child out of the mouth of a wolf. And he goes, what is it to me as a man of privilege? 6 months in jail and $1,000 if it can secure the freedom of another human being. Now, what I'm going to tell you now shocked me. And I just cannot see it happening today. Parker found out the hotel where the U.S. Marshals were staying. He knocked on the door and he introduced himself. And he said, I'm going to tell you, if you come to my house, I've got a gun. I'm going to use it and you're going to be dead. And furthermore, there's a lot of people in Boston like me. If I were you, I'd get on the first train out of town. And they did. They did. They got on the first train out of Boston back to D.C. Now clearly, all this is before we, Gandhi and King and pioneered nonviolent resistance. So I'm not advocating that we take these kinds of measures today. But I want you to see how committed these people were to justice. That's what I want you to see. After that, Parker did a wedding ceremony for the Crafts, and the Committee on Vigilance raised the money for them to sail across the sea to England so they could be free. Now I want to make the connection. By the way, we had Universalist Underground Railroad congregations in Olmsted, New Jersey, and Sycamore, Kansas, of all places. I want to make the connection now between the Underground Railroad and our commitment, our historic commitment to abolition, to what's going on with these Central American women and men and children being locked up in prisons, being now put in tents. Anybody been to El Paso, Texas? How long do you think any of us would survive in a tent? How long do you think the hostile occupier of the White House would last in a tent out in El Paso, Texas? And yet we want little kids to be in there? Come on. How depraved can you be? And how depraved can the Attorney General be to quote the Bible to justify this stuff? Of course, we know the Bible was quoted to justify slavery and all other kind of meanness and cruelty. But in 2005, First Unitarian Church in Austin was given the opportunity to hold a woman in physical sanctuary, a woman named Selma Franco, who is an LGBTQ activist from Guatemala. She actually came up on the Beast and got into Texas, got into Austin. Her attorney did not keep up her paperwork. She was given a deportation notice. Grassroots Leadership, who's one of the people that we work with, told us about this. First Unitarian Church was given this opportunity, and they decided to take Soma Franco into physical sanctuary in their congregation. Later, a bunch of us, spiritual activists, civic activists, went with her. About 60 of us went to the ICE office in D.C., in San Antonio, and we said, we stand with this woman. By God, she got not only a 6-month deferment, she got a 1-year deferment. I can assure you that would not have happened had those of faith and privilege had not shown up. And I'm happy to tell you that in October of last year, Soma Franco opened up her food truck in Austin, Texas. She has a resident card, and furthermore, she is employed part-time by Grassroots Leadership to help in the liberation of other people. So we, my friends, we can make a difference, and what we're doing is our justice ministry is working to have sanctuary networks in every city in Texas. And I want to thank Reverend Sherry for her commitment here. I want to thank Cindy Fountain for what's going on and developing here in Fort Worth and in Tarrant County and the connections that are being made. And I know you guys have had a Know Your Rights thing here, and you're doing a lot of other things. All this stuff is on a continuum. But the point is, if we're not active now, when in God's name will we be active? I love what you say over here. I read your mission statement. You want to make a positive difference. You want to have more influence. You want to be active. You're doing that. We thank you. We want you to join us and continue to develop this. It looks like to me it's only getting worse. It's getting more graphic. And I hate to say this, but it ain't going to be that long before, we don't want to spend money on these people. Maybe we just need, you know where I'm going, don't you? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. So in that meeting where the First Unitarian Board was meeting and trying to decide, one of the board members spoke up and said, they were getting ready to take their vote. He said, you know that little mission statement, that little affirmation of faith that we say every Sunday, well, like we said earlier, he said, this kind of seems like it's really in sync and in harmony with that. Now, my question to us before we take this vote is, if we're not going to do this, if we're not going to take this woman into sanctuary who's going to be deported if we don't, what will we do? And so that's the question. Individually, congregationally, as a faith, as a state, and as a nation, as people of good faith and good heart and good spirit, that's the question I think we have to keep asking ourselves. Amen.